Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. My favorite quote for the day, John Kenneth Galbraith. The modern conservative is engaged in one of man's oldest exercises in moral philosophy. That is the search for a superior moral justification for selfishness. Right. So how is that being played out in our world today? Well, let's start with Exxon Mobil, one of the most profitable companies in the world that regularly pays no U.S. income tax. They had a pretty horrible tar sands oil spill in Arkansas last month. Most people have heard bits and pieces of the story, but here's what you probably have not heard from the corporate media. First off, you got a glance of the ruptured the pipeline rupture and the spill because of citizen bloggers and journalists like Drew Barnes, who posted a video of it on YouTube. But you haven't seen much coverage from the air of this, have you? That's because, just like with the BP Halliburton blowout in the Gulf, the FAA imposed a no-fly zone over the oil spill. You're not allowed to see what's going on. ExxonMobil has even hired local police for security, and they're doing a pretty good job of keeping reporters away, according to Mother Jones, reporting that documented numerous instances of people being threatened with arrest for just trying to ask questions or take pictures on site.
Monday nights on C-SPAN.
Second, with all the money and profits from that oil pipeline, ExxonMobil doesn't have to pay into the federal fund to clean up oil disasters, including this one. Why? Because the stuff in that pipeline isn't oil, in quotes. It's that stuff that the press refers to as tar sands oil from Canada, but legally is known as diluted. How do you say this, Shana? Do you know? Or Jim? Is it bitumen? Bitumen? B-I-T-U-M-E-N. It's one of those words I've been reading since I was a little kid. I never heard said out loud. Let's say it's bitumen, whatever it is. It's basically it's slurried coal. It's shale, right? It's related to coal. And according to a 1980 law pushed through and passed by our bought-off Congress, that stuff that comes from Canada, that diluted bitumen, not being oil, is not subject to the tiny taxes that are imposed on regular oil and regular pipelines to pay into a fund to help cover the cost of spills from regular oil from regular pipelines. So even though this is worse, it's free. Another reason by the diluted bitumen, a.k.a. tar sands oil, that'll be coming down the Keystone XL to refine it on the Texas coast and then ship the refined diesel they extract from it to England and Mexico and China and Brazil. We, by the way, will get to keep all the poisons left over from the refining process right here in the United States. We get to pay for all the cancers from them. Expect Cancer Alley down south to grow substantially. Finally, to add insult to injury, we get one of the more heavily oil industry-funded members of Congress, Oklahoma Republican Congressman Mark Wayne Mullen, who tells us this.
I think Exxon should be actually patted on the back for the way they handled this.
Right. And this clueless congressional newbie repeats the lie that if the Keystone Pipeline carrying more of this tar sands oil to the Gulf Coast is finished, it'll somehow reduce our dependence on Middle Eastern oil. Trying to tie the wonders of ExxonMobil to the bombing in Boston, this fool actually said, quote, I mean, would we rather buy oil from the Middle East that sponsors the acts that we saw, like at the marathon that we just saw yesterday? End quote. I guess the congressman got out ahead of John King and CNN in knowing who blew up the pressure cookers in Boston. But aside from that stupidity, the pipeline will not reduce our dependence on foreign oil a bit because all that slurry from Canada is going to very, very profitable refineries on the Gulf Coast where they can export the refined gas and diesel overseas. Last year, our nation's #1 export, it was not TVs or jeans or computers. We invented all those things, but we don't make them here anymore. #1 export of the United States of America, gasoline and diesel fuel. Refined oil products. Yep, The big oil companies are exporting gas and diesel from the U.S. like crazy, keeping the prices here high for us and the profits for them very, very high. And they want to export even more and let us keep the waste and the cancers and the oil spill risks. We've been scammed. From the 1980 law exempting the oil companies from paying into cleanup funds for Canadian tar sands oil, to blocking our press from covering their spills, to buying and selling our members of Congress like they were cattle or sheep. All of this. Now, just think about this for a minute. This oil industry is doing all of this stuff to keep alive a 19th century fuel. This is the 21st century, for goodness sake. A 19th century fuel that is destroying our planet. It's time to leave behind fossil fuels altogether. Portugal just produced 70% of all their power needs from renewables. We can do that too. We're still the nation to put a man on the moon. We invented the transistor, the integrated circuit. I remember when it happened. We have led the world for centuries. If we could just get the bought and paid for politicians out of the way and get our press to actually cover the horrors of tar sands oil and the reality of climate change, we just may be able to once again have that John F. Kennedy vision of being the city on the hill. Yeah, I know Reagan used the phrase too, but he was quoting Kennedy. We should even take a lesson from the dozens of nations that have nationalized their oil. And like Norway, use that money to send their kids to college. Can you imagine? Hey, we got a lot of oil under the ground in the United States. It belongs to us. We're going to send our kids to school with it. You can pump it out and make a little profit on it, but it's our oil. They do that up in Texas or up in Alaska, you know. They got this permanent fund. It's got millions and millions of dollars in it every year. When Sarah Palin was governor, every year she sent out a check for $2,000, not just to every voter, but to 3-year-olds, 6-week-olds. People would try to have their baby the day before the checks went out so they'd get last year's check plus next year's check. I mean, come on. If the Socialist Republic of Alaska can do it, why can't the rest of the... I mean, you know, if a socialist like Sarah Palin can pull that off and be proud of it, it's time for us to step up and speak out and say, you know, the oil industry does not represent us. It does not own us. And we are not going to let them destroy our planet or our country or our way of life or our lives or perhaps most importantly, and all of those things are very important, but the thing that can influence all the rest of them, our form of government. We're not going to let them do that anymore. We are going to show up and we are going to speak out and we are going to hold them accountable. You've been noticing how long it's been taking the Obama administration to come to a decision about the Keystone XL pipeline. The pressure is enormous. You can add to it. Go to 350.org and become part of the solution. 15 minutes past the hour.